So good morning. We have with us today Dr. Pramod G Krishnan IFS, who is the Chief Wildlife Warden of Kerala. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, good morning.
Kerala has the longest history of cultivating teak, and the experience of Kerala is going to be used by many countries across the globe. Teak has gone to more than 64 countries across the globe, and everybody would like to come over to Kerala, go to the Connolly plot, see the teak museum. So Kerala is the pioneer in the whole process. So from the forest department's point of view, how was that experience? Started from the colonial period, where the first plantation was established, then clearing of natural forest to establish plantations. And could you tell the whole story for the global audience?
Yeah, actually the very genesis of forestry establishment in the country in general and particularly in Kerala, maybe 150 years ago, that was actually, premised upon teak. Okay. So teak became the center of attraction, the point of attraction for the creation of forest establishment. Because when the oak forests were in decline, or the timber was in diminishing supply, they wanted a substitute for the shipbuilding industry, and then teak was an ideal substitute, especially along the Malabar coast. So they established the forestry establishment in the country, and that too in Kerala too. But it has another interesting parallel, especially in Kerala. See, Dietrich Brandis is considered to be the father of Indian forestry, because he came from Europe, but he worked in Burma. He had an additional qualification of raising teak plantations in Burma. Then he was brought into India. So he is considered as the father of Indian forestry. But incidentally, he is a person who brought rubber also to Kerala.
Okay.
So the father of what we call rubber cultivation as well as the father of teak cultivation, same. And both are tropical crops. Okay.
And interestingly, rubber has come from Brazil. And teak has gone
to Brazil from India. Yeah. So this is kind of cultural or biological exchange, which has huge cultural as well as economic implication. So if you look at the history of Kerala Forest Department, you can say that actually 5% of its time, this production function centered around teak cultivation. That dominated the forestry governance.
So that has a bearing on the training of the forest staff also, right?
Absolutely.
Like for the IFS officers, the range officers.
Absolutely.
I personally think that, I don't know whether it's right, a major part of the training process is the silviculture operations.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
Absolutely. If I compare this with a tree, I would say that the central portion of forestry governance is actually dominated by these production functions based around teak. All other functions like conservation functions, etc., were actually around the periphery. The skin deep only. It was, for most part of its governance. Or rather, alternatively, we can say that these conservation were attributed from a retrospective perspective quite often. So basically, it is very simple. The production forestry centered around teak cultivation was the core function of forest management.
On the face of it, it was just production forest.
Production forest.
But along the years, other things came in.
Absolutely.
Like, for example, conservation, carbon sink, things, that climate change.
Excellent.
So you mean to say that those were all additionalities?
Absolutely. If I put it this way, 1864-65, Indian Forestry Establishment was formed. Then immediately came the imperial forest legislation. Then this legislation, then the forestry practices were actually imported from largely from Europe, Germany and France, and they were mostly mathematical. They were mostly centered around biological, mathematical as well as people exclusive. Because the objective was utilitarian, completely 100% utilitarian, colonial utilitarian objectives. Now, 1878, the first amendment to the imperial forestry legislation happens, and that brought in the concept of forest reservation. That was again, the confiscation of a state property, the public property by the state.
A common property resource.
The source was actually appropriated by the state. For certain purposes. Then the entire forestry research and forestry education, that was also designed to cater to this objective. I mean, that is very evident actually. Now, 1894, the first policy came in. But interestingly, that forest policy talked more about agriculture.
Okay.
It said that actually the very purpose of forest management is to cater to agriculture. Okay, this is very interesting. But on the face of it, actually on ground, the forestry management revolved around production forestry only, though land parceling was happening for agriculture expansion.
Okay.
This was happening. Now, after independence, probably once the colonial regime is over, probably we could have shifted to some other regime. But
one interesting thing which I remember, during the freedom struggle, when Gandhi took up the Dandi March, when he started making salt to break the rule, salt can be produced only along the coastline. But inside the India, the major area, the people were asked to break the forest law. To break the as part of the civil disobedience. So forest was the in Kerala also it happened.
We had it in Chimeni,
yes.
that when
what we call
Tol Samaram, etc. Yes. It's interesting.
So come to the post-independence.
Now post-independence, probably things would have changed. There could have been a departure from these colonial practices, but that didn't happen. That didn't happen largely because of one issue. In the second 5-year plan of India, that gave a lot of emphasis on what you call industrialization. Okay, so it was during 1952 when the second forest policy came. And that was the first forest policy of independent India. The objective of forest management was revolving around industrialization. That means forest has to provide raw material for forest-based industries. Okay, and large-scale extraction started happening in Kerala. Also, if you look at these bamboo resources,
so it was
are
basically
extracted
for the pulp industry.
These bamboo resources, and within a decade, I think it declined to such an extent that probably then people started thinking about pulpwood, exotic pulpwood plantation. So 64, if you remember, that our Attapadi region in Kerala, I think that was a region where large-scale extraction of bamboo happened. That was 64, 65, 66. Then people realized that this is not going to last. Then how are we going to sustain these pulp, paper and pulp and rayon industries? Then this idea came that we should now go for what you call artificial, short rotation, fast growing, exotic pulpwood plantation.
One point, like for example, Kerala has got a interesting experience of industrialization, fast industrialization. The first EMS government, communist government, they had a feeling that industrialization is very slow pace activity here. So it has to be increased. So they invited Birla to come over here, gave land, established a factory, and see just 25 years the factory worked and everything was closed up at the cost of huge loss of forest resources and also pollution of the Chalya River. So that was that burned the fingers of the government on industrialization. I don't think that Kerala ever took up it again. Or very recently, only IT, non-polluting industries are coming up. Not the type of.
Absolutely.
So that has got a very interesting bearing. And it's if that was continuing, it would have been the case with. I was talking to a person from Venezuela. They say that mining industry and cattle ranching are expanding into the forest. And there is no stopping that. So Kerala was saved on that front.
Absolutely.
So then what happened?
Actually, then this second half of 60s and 1960s and 70s, and to a great extent 80s also. That's so the what you call the expansion of these pulpwood plantations into the forest. So around roughly about 35,000 hectares of natural forests, primary forests were actually converted to establish these primarily acacias and eucalyptus. Okay, I mean that was a policy during that time. Somehow they thought of sustaining the forest-based industries that was already established. But that really happened at a cost of what you call the natural resources. That's true. But the very incident which you mentioned about, that happened during 70s, the protest of the people against the polluting river, that is probably the first popular what you call environment movement in the state, though not adequately documented. It has the equal status that of Silent Valley agitation. But unfortunately, that is not documented properly. Now, 80s probably slowly and slowly, there is again a slow shift. You can see that there is some change is happening that along with the production forestry, the value, the conservation, what we call narrative is also, we can see that it was also slowly getting, coming up, sprouting in many places. It is slowly emerging, okay? But the 88 forest policy gave the much needed, actually, the impetus to that particular phase.
Okay.
It talked mostly about conservation. Now, interestingly, it was during 1952, the then agriculture minister, K. Munshi, who was the central agriculture minister, who gave the concept that forest resources are extremely important for agriculture. His hypothesis was that 1 hectare of forest resources for forest can provide water to 2 hectare agriculture field. That's why this concept of 33% of forest cover.
Okay, that is the equation.
That was the equation built up. So it's largely what you call an experienced, what you call politicians who had great knowledge about ground reality. It was a speculation. That actually led to this great thinking.
Okay.
So, actually, up to 80s, if you look at very carefully the interest of the farmers as well as the interest of conservation, it was not very different. Both were actually mutually inclusive, actually. But this narrative slowly started changing post-80s due to various other reasons, which is goes beyond the, what you call, scope of this discussion. Now, but 1990, then slowly, what we popularly call this participatory forest management. The people started realizing that in order to, what you call, manage your resources sustainably, we need people's participation, because people are depending on forests for livelihoods. So that has to be made sustainable, or we have to what you call boost positive dependency and reduce negative dependency. And that experiment, one of the earliest experiments on that, was in Periyar Tiger Reserve.
Yeah, that is something very interesting. But before coming to the Periyar case, I just wanted to ask about specifically on teak. We had the first plantation coming in the 1840s. We now have almost all our plantations in the 4th, 5th rotation. Many things have changed in the soil. So how does the forest department looks at the whole?
Yeah. See, the forest department's view or experience with teak plantations is quite interesting. Like as of now, see, our first organized teak plantation started in a place called Nilambur. It was in 1840s.
Yes.
Okay, and the stump planting was tested, and then subsequently, and it was found successful. And at the same time, the commercial extraction from natural forests were also happening. But they were actually raising commercial plantation, thinking about a time when these natural forests, the supply from natural forests will diminish. Yeah. Okay, and they also wanted actually the supply to happen for eternally. On a regular interval. Okay, so very organized, in an organized manner, teak plantations came up. But in the process, what happens? As of now, Kerala has got about 85,000 to 90,000 hectares of teak plantations. So it has become extensive forestry. See, if you can say that around 3% of the state's land area is locked up in teak plantation. It's all raised by forest department. But over the years, what has happened, as you rightly pointed out, the second rotation, then the phenomenon of that second rotation decline. It's becoming very, very evident these days now. Now we have done an analysis actually a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. What we have found is that actually, we are at a stage wherein we have to critically look at the performance of our teak plantation. See, number one, the overall productivity is going down substantially. It is one of the main reasons is actually that this expansion into even unsuitable sites. So the average, when you average out, the value goes down. So we have taken a conscious decision that we will be rationalizing the teak plantations. Okay, so all unpromising, all what we call non-performing, unproductive plantations will be reverted to its natural stage. Okay. And whatever is left, or whichever is having a good potential, then those plantations have to be put to intensive management. Okay. Now the problem is one small issue. The problem is that the teak, one of the maybe tragedies of teak is that as a crop is that we started looking at it as a forestry crop. Rather, we should have treated it like rubber. It should have been treated, had it been treated like what you call agriculture crop, probably this would have had a better chance actually survival. Yeah.
And when you are saying of moving the plantations into low productivity plantations in a natural forest, is it the plan to extract the timber and then convert it, or just leave the timber itself to nature?
There are various actually scenarios on this. See, there are places like, say, high altitude areas like Wayanad, where extraction and then leaving the area back to nature is not advisable. Because that will be more what you call destructive to the existing vegetation. But there are areas where actually the trees have already achieved what you call much bigger commercial what you call dimensions. Probably that can be removed and then the area can be put back to nature also.
One experience should be from Parambikulam, where we have left the teak plantation just there. What was the experience?
That is also found to be extremely good. But what has happened is that, see, many a times, some people say that actually you remove the teak and then the natural forest come up. But our experience shows that it could be the other way around also. There are places where when we have removed the teak and thought that native species will come back, what came was invasive species. So, I mean, there is no one size solution for everything. Depending on the situation, we have to go for it. But there are also places where, I mean, just abandon the practice from an area and just leave it to nature. That is also there.
So keeping the canopy closed is a trick.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So coming back to other productivity issue, how much is the share of money to the state exchequer from the forest department? Because initially I think forest department ranked very high because of the big scale plantation activities. Has it fallen down, the amount of share?
It is actually the other way around. I would say that other sectors have actually gone up. Forest department largely contributes to, on an average, forest department contributes about 300 crore rupee from the sale of timber alone.
Oh, great.
Other revenue sources are also there, like ecotourism, the non-timber forest produce. So that is not included in this. But this has been actually, it is remaining constant for quite some time. But in terms of percentage, it definitely it is coming down because other sectors have actually started gaining more and more prominence.
One interesting point which has to be cleared is regarding the industry, forest industry. We had a very interesting company in Nilambur itself. But then over the years it just went up. What led to that? Is it government, because of the government policy or?
Well, I mean, see, quite often what happens, as you know, any public sector undertaking may not have the kind of flexibility to compete in the what you call the market, market processes. So that could be one of the reasons that has led to the decline of that industry.
Because I remember that when it was established, it had the best machinery in Asia
Absolutely.
So that was one sad situation regarding teak in Nilambur. Other than the productivity loss, are there other experiences with teak?
See, the teak, the biggest problem is actually, as I said, which we are in the process of what you call transforming teak into that another management domain. See, number one, I said, we can't have what you call extensive teak plantations and spread our resources too thin. So you rationalize, identify high quality, highly what you call promising sites, and then focus there, energy there. And instead of managing teak only for the first few years, now you will have to go for intensive management throughout its rotation. So this is one practice. Now again, when we have done some kind of an analysis or some kind of an assessment, what was found is that there are two kinds of demands for teak. So one is actually big sized timber. The second one is actually short rotation crops with small what you call dimensions. Now a private sector may not be able to produce these big timber because the lock-in period is too high. Probably that is where we should pitch in, and we should actually encash that particular opportunity. And the scope and opportunity for producing these what you call small dimension, small sized timber should be given to this what you call the private sector, only the small farmers or etc. etc. They can do that. So we are slowly moving towards that particular approach.
I was talking to the director of ITTO, International Tropical Timber Organization. And she classifies the countries to producers of timber, consumers of timber. And where does India come in? I asked her, and she told me India is a hybrid country. Because India exports timber and also imports timber. So what is the dynamics behind that? What is your perception?
Yeah, actually, that's see. I mean, as a matter of policy, we don't export roundwood.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as you said, we are also exporting maybe sawn timber or wood-based products.
Okay.
So that is there. But now say you look at Kerala. If you look at Kerala, Kerala is actually undergoing major ecological and social and demographic transformation. Yeah. Now, on an ecological front, Kerala, as you know, we are undergoing this phenomenon called net biomass accumulation, which happens in a highly carbon-loaded environment, that too in a tropical region. So our greenery is actually going up. So, I mean, in a way that is very favorable for cultivation of teak, number one. But at the same time, we have other problems like, say, for example, second rotation decline in areas which are repetitively put under cultivation of teak. Then, some people say that actually the climate change, then the proliferation of invasive species, then faulty management practices, then the absence of, appropriate seed sources. All these are actually contributing to, affecting the performance of teak plantation in a way. But at the same time, if you look at it, the teak is normally treated as a long rotation crop. But a farmer may not be in a position to keep his land locked for 60 years. Now in Kerala, because of this demographic shift, where large scale migration is happening from our landscapes, especially in and around the forest areas.
The reverse migration.
Reverse migration is happening, and a lot of land, the erstwhile agricultural land is now getting abandoned. So how do you resurrect those areas with what kind of practice? So probably one species that can actually come into that space is teak, provided if our research institutions can come up with short rotation, but high quality teak. Optimally maybe between 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
Anything, that would be a major breakthrough. So we will have the resilience in terms of carbon capture, as well as we can actually, it has relevance on the, resurrecting the agriculture in that areas. And, these abandoned, agriculture fields are now reported to be one of the prime drivers of human-wildlife conflict-related issues in Kerala also. So you look at it the way it is going. So the future of teak in Kerala, what I see is, surely we will have two streams.
Yeah.
One stream, forestry sector will manage
long rotation
crops, but on a much limited scale.
Okay.
Much limited, maybe around 20-25,000 hectares. At the same time, the teak will also be to be treated like an agriculture crop, and it will get into our farms, homesteads and farming system. I won't call it agroforestry, because agroforestry, the moment you talk about agroforestry, the common connotation is it is agriculture.
Okay.
And the teak is a forestry crop. So there is a mismatch people perceive. So we have to say that, in our, in Kerala, in our homesteads, if we can, and culturally people are still, attached to teak. They value teak. So if we have a variety, if we have a clone, that can yield the required, timber in 10 years or 15 years, I see that will be a major breakthrough in Kerala, and that the teak sourced from such areas can be thought for export also.
Fine.
Because this is general policy, but there could be exceptions. Because, as you rightly said, in some country, Brazil, some country is only exporting. Yeah. They don't use domestic consumption. So teak is having such a huge future, and if it is a fast growing, it has carbon capture functions also.
Okay, great. So that means that nearly 80,000 to 85,000 hectares of teak is going to be reduced to around 20,000.
25,000. Yeah.
So that area, the rest of the area is going to be natural forest.
Absolutely.
And do you think that that has got a positive bearing on the human-wildlife conflict?
Absolutely. See, this could be thought from another dimension also. See, some of if you look at the drivers of human-wildlife conflict, we all know that habitat fragmentation is one of the prime drivers. And these production forests developed and owned by forest department is also the source of this internal fragmentation.
Yes.
In many places this has happened now. So for example, so removing that plantations from this list, especially in, see some of the areas if you look at, say for example, Tundathil range. That plantation was taken up in an area which would have been an ideal elephant habitat. So what I'm saying is that this rationalization process of rationalizing teak plantations in Kerala has a huge relevance on reducing human-wildlife conflict also, along with our the recent attempt to restore all our acacias and eucalyptus areas also back to nature.
Great. We need to get back to very interesting story, which has got a very personal bearing for you also. Like for example, I will put it this way: government departments get money from the government for their salary expenditures. Any money they generate automatically goes to the treasury. The department, no department is able to use the money which they collect. It goes to the state, and the money they get comes from the treasury. So this is a norm, and this norm was broken for the first time in Kerala by the establishment of the Periyar Tiger Foundation. It happened many years before. Even now, many of the state forest department are afraid to use the money which they collect. So that was a pioneering move at that point of time, and that made a big break in how governance happens. And as a person who was part of, I have heard stories of you going to the secretariat with a vehicle, with a printer and a computer over there, getting things. So what was your experience? Where did the idea come from, and how did it materialize?
Well, we were discussing earlier also, like that was a period of what you call transformation in forestry governance. Like slowly the values of conservation, the concept of conservation was getting into the centrality of forest management, which was predominantly production forestry based. So what has happened, but the actual practice was started happening in Periyar. People were getting involved, they started making revenue, and that was actually sustaining the entire what you call ecosystem there. Then people were also what you call involved in the process, and that means they were actually moving away from the destructive practices. So we had to actually, and tourism expanded. So a lot of livelihood opportunity for that was a big boost to the local economy also. The entire town benefited. So that was all part of a project.
Okay.
Now once the project comes to an end, what will happen? Normally that is a big issue. So we thought actually that should not happen to this case. So we should sustain it. So sustainability, you can view it from ecological sustainability, social sustainability, then institutional sustainability, as well as economic sustainability. So this economic as well as institutional sustainability was extremely important. So when we thought about it, actually a few models came. One was actually our South African protected area management models. Big safaris, and they have trust funds. People contribute. Using that fund, actually they manage the park. But in our system, that is not an established practice. But still we thought we will form kind of a foundation, kind of an institutional arrangement, which we thought should be like a government-owned NGO. Okay. GONGO. We can call GONGO. It should have the authority of the government as well as the flexibility of an NGO. Yeah. So that was a concept. So we then developed one such concept.
Who was the father of the concept?
That actually came from me only.
Great.
That came from me only. So, we definitely looked at South African models, etc., yes, but adapted hugely to the Indian situation.
But the idea is perfect, brilliant. Yeah. But actually getting it done,
it was difficult. But what has happened is that, our people are also good actually. So, see, we knew that actually in order to, get it done, we have to put it past the government. Okay, the cabinet has to agree to this. So when we looked at it, we understood that at least 50 people have to be convinced. Okay. That was the chain. The chain, the file moves like that. So most of these people are brought to Periyar. Okay. Periyar is a tourist place, so we invited them, you come and see. Experience it and showed to them. Then in many cases, what has happened, it became their responsibility also. Okay. So they were pushing it. They were pushing it, and they were helping it also. Ultimately, even the minister as well as the chief ministers, they agreed to it actually finally. Great. Okay. So and initially, what has happened? It started as an extra budgetary source. Whatever the government was getting, that will go to the treasury only. Okay. But we put in an additional surcharge. Okay. such charge for 10 rupee on Indian visitor and 100 rupee on foreign visitor. So the polluter pays principle.
Okay.
So that was initial funding. But subsequently, then when this, when the central government took note of this, when this started actually functioning quite well, even beyond the project period, they understood it. Then they thought actually we will mainstream it into the national legislation.
It was replicated.
It was then 2006 national legislation, a chapter was added to the Wildlife Protection Act.
Okay.
And major part of was this concept of foundation.
Great.
And now all the tiger reserves in the country is having foundation. But interestingly, in that amendment, legislative amendment, they brought in the concept of recycling the gate receipts.
Okay.
So not only the cess part, whatever money is generated in and around inside the tiger reserve should be plowed back to the tiger reserve, to the people.
Were you also part of the legislation at the national level?
Yes, national level I was also part of it.
Okay.
So it has almost based on the Periyar model only. Now interestingly, now all the tiger reserves in the country are having these foundations, and the total revenue generated by them is around 750 crore rupees per year, and that is almost 3 times the planned funds. Funds earmarked by the government for tiger conservation.
Okay. So that is one of the most important success stories.
Absolutely. And somebody was also saying that about 1.5 lakh people are now getting livelihoods, direct employment from this kitty. And somebody also attributed now this revival of tiger population, and especially when we hit bottom rock in Sariska. And now it is, on an average 8% growth rate people are saying. That is again attributed to huge extent to the financial support given by this recycling revenue all across the state.
And when we hear about human wildlife conflicts across the state, there's no stories coming from Periyar.
Yeah.
Why is it so?
See, not only Periyar, barring in Wayanad, none of the protected areas in the state are having stories of human wildlife conflict. Maybe sporadic cases, maybe they're in Peachy. Other than that, nothing. See, one of the reasons is that actually here the habitats are intact. In most Periyar, Parambikulam, these are our excellent habitats. See, another indicator for this is the sedimentation in Mullaperiyar Dam. Mullaperiyar Dam is the oldest dam in Kerala, but it has the lowest levels of sedimentation because the catchment is intact. So that is a very, very, very pointer to the whole story. That if we want to actually protect nature, if we want to safeguard our environment or mitigate human wildlife conflict, the most long-standing solution is bringing the habitats back. Habitats back.
And the last part of my interview is focusing on your recently awarded doctorate.
Yeah.
So welcome to the Doctors Club.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And what was your thesis?
Yeah, I was looking at the effect, the evolution of various governance models on natural resource management in Kerala, and how have they evolved over the years, under what kind of political, cultural, social, conditions, and how have they been performing, and how effective are they now, and what is their future. So, broadly, the topic revolved around 3 objectives, these 3 objectives. One was a little bit of history. So, it's a very broad-based history. History, it talked about, say, for example, the Kerala's history from, say, the Homo sapiens first set foot in Kerala maybe around 55,000 years ago. Now, these historical, these archaeological studies are now available. So, then how have they, interacted with nature? And we are also now supporting data on population. How much would have been how many people would have lived here? Now then about say 5,000 years ago, things have started changing. Slowly the population is expanding. So the first African migration, then comes about that around 3,000, 5,000 or even 9,000 years ago, especially after the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, you can see another big wave of people coming to Kerala.
But that through land?
That through.
And the early one through sea?
Early one through actually the coast. Now they were taking the coastal route basically. And then in between then the merchants community started coming from across the state. So by around 1 AD, Then we have started seeing major changes in the ecological settings of Kerala. Coconut arrives in Kerala, then wetland paddy comes. Then 6th century onwards, the other migration, big migration, we call Brahminic migration, takes place to the, again, land-based migration.
So it is in a larger historical framework. Thesis is placed.
And thesis is placed, and also how has it impacted nature?
Okay.
I was always trying to link it that. For example, how coconut transformed Kerala's coastal landscape. Wetland paddy. We can't imagine that now because coconut and paddy are part of now our nostalgia now, or even the cultural identity of Kerala. But once upon a time, they were invasive species to this landscape. Then came actually the coffee, tea, then rubber. So all these crops, they would have, so practically what I was trying to say is that number one, then tracing the history of Kerala, then colonial history. So basically, I was trying to say is that two premises here. Number one is that there is nothing called virgin forest.
Yeah.
Practically every inch of our forest is somehow what you call interfered with. So this was again a colonial myth making.
Somebody has walked through.
Somebody has walked through every point, and you utilized it the way they could do. This was one thing. Second was if you look at the history of forestry management, colonial forest management. I would say that the thesis goes like this: is that it was built upon three premises. One is mathematics. Second is people exclusion. The third one is what you call biology. Biology means checklist making.
Okay.
That I go for hunting, then I get 50 of us went for hunting. 2 of us got fascinated by one bird with a particular what you call curve in the beak. So I started noting it down. That becomes actually the checklist making. It is not, I would not say that it is not ecology. Ecology is about relationships. It's about networking, functionality, etc. So it was very mechanical. This checklist making is very mechanical process. So the official Indian forestry establishment was based on these three pillars. Now, if you again look at the evolution of what you call the other aspects of non-official environmental processes also, you can see almost the same resonance.
Okay.
Pupil exclusion was actually part of it. It always remained a little bit elitist. So the common man could never connect to it.
Sure.
Chaliar, that experiment. So if you want to be an environmentalist, you have to have certain attributes.
Oh, yeah. A light person.
An educated person, urban look. This particular thing slowly came in and distanced actually the common man from the scene.
Yeah.
And the resonance of which we are facing even now. Even in this context of human wildlife conflict also, this is there actually in a big way. So historical alienation. So then came so this territorial forestry establishment as a governance model was built upon these three premises. Then the second model, government-owned model, was built in protected areas. That was copied from our American model. But American model also,
the
Yellowstone experiment also, but their motto was we want actually a place untrammeled by the footprints of human beings. So there also it is people exclusion. Common man actually went out. So this was actually one of the premises. Now then other models came, JFM, then community conserved areas. So its strength and weaknesses were actually plotted. So ultimately, we can prove that actually none of these models actually can stand alone.
Okay.
It has a high relevance in specific context. But ultimately then we need a what you call that landscape. All these models need to come together on a landscape basis. So basically that was the thesis. Give a theoretical foundations to this concept of landscape-based conservation approach.
I just wanted to ask about one particular group, the indigenous people of Kerala. So, since your thesis speaks about the bigger history, the very first arrival of people in Kerala, so what do you think about the fate of the indigenous people in Kerala?
Well, that's an interesting question, and see, if you again look at it, probably just let us imagine how they would have come. Now the latest studies, this paleogenetic studies, they say that they crossed Eritrea, then got into Arabia, then started moving along the coast. And there is a particular reason why they walked along the coast. See, the interiors of the what you call continents were largely populated by other human homo species, very muscular, very powerful. But we were very weak and meek comparatively. So we were walking along the coast. Number two, the second reason was that along the coast, if you walk, irrespective of the place where we walk, you could have had only one fish technology for what you call catching fish. Whereas you walk across the landscape, then depending on the terrain, technology has to change. So this was different tools are required. But in this case, it is much easier. So they started walking, and in that process, they say that they reached our Malabar coast. Probably would have been around 55,000 years. Malabar coast, along with the, other small islands, because the sea level was much what you call lower those days. And those remnants, they say, are the what you call the descendants. We can still see they are our tribal communities. And some of them actually, they say that the first migration, they went up to Australia. Australia, at that time, it was connected. Okay. It was a landmass.
They could walk.
They could walk. They crossed even, this one, our Andaman Nicobar archipelago and walked to Australia. They went to Mongolia. Then came the reverse migration, mixing up.
Okay.
But and then to them actually, the other migrations also, this mixing up was always happening. There is nothing called Puritanism from that genetic perspective in our community. But in varying degrees we can say, okay, they exist actually population. But if you look at the evolution of actually what you call the tribal communities over the years, when we also interact with the tribal community these days, there is a stark what you call that distinction is coming, the younger generation and old generation. Younger generation is more very fast, very rapidly what you call they are accepting or embracing modernity. Okay. Because what happens, if you look at the way India's tribal policy was formulated, as you know, it was shaped by this warrior Alvin. He was a friend of Nehru. So his three doctrines, the doctrine of assimilation, the doctrine of what you call exclusion, the doctrine of integration. Though we adopted the doctrine of integration, but fortunately or unfortunately, all our developmental inputs to the tribal communities are the mainstream development inputs.
And India has not acknowledged that they are indigenous people.
They are indigenous people.
Because the government of India says that we are all indigenous.
Indigenous, exactly.
But, so what happens is that many of the big movements on behalf of indigenous people, which happens in New Zealand, Australia, America, our indigenous people are not coupled with them. Basically because they are not classified as indigenous people.
So and on top of that, it is also the doctrine of assimilation. That let us get assimilated into the national mainstream. Though theoretically you can still maintain your identity, but that seldom happens. As the generations pass, more and more modernity comes in, more and more external value system comes in. It's only our aspiration that you maintain your tribal ethnicity or whatever it is. But it's fast changing. It's a reality. Okay. Reality. But
so you perceive that in the coming decades, there will be much more and more assimilated to the mainstream.
Mainstream. That is already happening, and there's a very likelihood.
So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.